Okay, welcome to the Chosen Few podcast. I'm your host, Demetrius. Today we got episode 2. So this person I've known for 6 years now. We met in 2018 when he came to my unit when we were in Afghanistan. This guy has 5 deployments, and I wrote all this stuff down. He's got a lot of stuff, so I had to write it all down on a notebook, but I'm going to read it. He's got 5 deployments, all to Afghanistan. My dad and I actually did the math yesterday, and this guy has 4 years and 8 months total of Afghan living. So he's been in Afghanistan, not at the same time, obviously, but cumulative altogether. He has 4 years and 8 months in the country of Afghanistan. Um, he has his air assault wings, his combat infantryman's badge, his expert infantryman's badge. He's got 2 Purple Hearts. For the people who don't know what a Purple Heart is, it is for getting wounded in combat. He has 2 of them. He also has an Army Commendation Medal with V for Valor for a mass cal, so a mass casualty on an IDF attack, an indirect fire attack. He was laying down machine gun fire. He helped medevac personnel and ended up getting medevaced himself. And that was in Afghanistan. He appeared on the National Geographic show My Fighting Season, which is a documentary about the early on years of the global war on terror in Afghanistan when he was a part of the 1st Armored Division. He was our platoon SDM, so our platoon sniper in the headquarters element of the Praetorians and Chosen Company 1st Platoon, and a team leader and squad leader as well on our deployment. So please welcome Staff Sergeant Current Jeff Miller to the Chosen Few podcast.
Hey, Chosen Company, Praetorians, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So we met in 2018, right? When you showed up to Bagram, you got attached to the headquarters element. And so for everybody listening or watching, there isn't too many people that our platoon at the time trusted to pretty much show us the lay of the land of Afghanistan. But for somebody who had been there previously 4 times, we were extremely lucky and we felt very safe going into a deployment with Sergeant Miller or Jeff. There's not too many people in that platoon who had deployed previous to my deployment, but the person who came to us ended up had been there 4 times previously. So we were very, very comfortable that he knew the lay of the land. He knew how the locals worked. He knew Bagram pretty well. And correct me if I'm wrong, you spent, besides my deployment or our deployment that we were on together, you spent the 4 deployments all in the same province, which was it Logar?
Yeah, Logar province, the Eastern province. I spent the last 4 deployments on and kind of bounced around a little bit to the south, but yeah, mainly Logar province.
Okay, nice. And you were in the ship.
Yeah, for my first deployment and somewhat of my second, and started slowing down later in the years. But that first one really, it had some stuff to it. It definitely had a little bit of shit to it.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to dive into that. I forgot to mention that you are at 15 years in, so you have 5 more years until retirement.
Yep.
How do you feel? So for me personally, real quick, my 6.5 years went super, super quick. I didn't really think I would make it past 1 contract, but then after a while, you just kind of just keep reenlisting and reenlisting and reenlisting. How does it make you feel that you are 5 years away from being completed with 20 years in the Army?
It's honestly, it does not feel like 15 years. Like you said, it goes by so fast. I'm excited for it, but I'm also sad at the same time that it felt so fast because I love this. But yeah, 5 more years is kind of hits you in the face when you realize it. But it went by fast and it's been fun. So I mean, you're having fun. Time flies.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely there's a lot of ups and downs of the Army. You know, you don't really like being in it when you're in it. Sometimes some of the stuff is fun, the training and the guys, but when you finally get your DD 214, that's mine hanging on my wall. But when you finally get that DD 214 and you leave, it like really smacks you in the face that it's over. And I had a really rough time, like my last day, the day that I got my DD 214. Um, I mean, I just remember it like they handed it to you when I was on Benning, at least they handed it to me and they were just like, all right, see ya. And I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, quick
So,
kick to the ass real fast, and out the door you go.
yeah, and it's funny because there was so many people in there that were getting out, and it's just those people just deal with it every time. I mean, do we expect or want this huge celebration and fireworks going off as we leave and everybody's clapping? No, we don't. We know that's not going to happen. But the reality of just getting a piece of paper that pretty much has your entire life on it. I mean, it has awards, it has decorations, it has time in service, locations if you've ever been deployed. Um, and you just get that little piece of paper and you just kind of just skip on out of there. So, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So where are you from, man? Where are you from? Honestly, not just saying this for the podcast. I forgot where you're from. So let's.
That's all right. I'm a Floridian, so
Oh yeah,
I grew up, meth and wrestling alligators. The Floridian thing. So,
yeah,
uh, yeah, no, grew up in Florida, born and raised.
nice.
Yeah, and from a small town called Tarpon Springs. Not a lot of
Oh,
people
okay,
know it,
yeah, I've
but
heard of it. Nice.
Tampa area.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I got a lot of family in Florida. It's a dream of mine
Mhm.
to hopefully live there one day. But I don't know. I feel like Florida is just like a open world, like Grand Theft Auto map. There's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
always
no.
something going on in Florida, and there's just you have either people like eating each other's faces off, or you have like
Mhm.
literally alligator wrestling, or Florida's wild. It's the best thing I can relate it to is just an open world simulator like Call of Duty or GTA map.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's a outlaw state. It seems like
yeah,
it's wild.
yeah, yeah. I like Florida, but all right, and for the people who obviously don't know you, married, girlfriend, fiance, married. Okay, married, good. And how
Married,
long have you
yeah,
guys been
been
together?
we've been married 8 years. This last October is 8 years for us. Met my wife whenever I was in Tennessee, stationed at Campbell. Love my life, love her. Shout out to her, obviously.
Yeah,
But married, no kids, got a couple pups running around, and that's about it.
nice. How all right, so 8 years. How has it been for her with you in the military and deploying? Because it's not an easy job to be a military spouse at all.
Hmm.
Dealing with the constant deployments, especially earlier on in like the GWAT with the every year deployment kind of thing. But with training and any infantry training we did, or going out to the field or whatever, how did she deal with that? Um, with you being gone.
So I got super lucky. My wife is actually prior service. She's National Guard. If you can call that service, but she was National Guard. She was in for 6 years when we met. That's kind of how we met, was through the Army.
Mhm.
And then we went through three of my five deployments together, and she deployed for a 6 month stint um, to Bulgaria, Romania. So she's kind of used to it. She knows it. She's ready for it to be over. Unfortunately, I'm in the Great White North right now, so she's tired of the snow.
Yeah,
Uh, ready to get some sunshine. But she works hard, especially dealing with me on a daily basis. I give her props. So she's my rock here with that one.
nice. We're That's awesome. Yeah, I again for people who are listening, I've met her a handful of times, being back at Carson, and she was just always so sweet and nice to be around. And I was when I was at Carson, I didn't have a significant other. I was never married. But the wives of my friends just really were just super accepting, and we always had a great time, whether it was partying at Barksdale's house or Ochoa's house or down on Tejon Street in Colorado Springs. Um, yeah, so yeah, huge shout out to her. Awesome, awesome woman. Um, all right, cool. So what was your childhood like? What'd you do as for a fun activity in the Sunshine State? Did you wrestle alligators or wrestle meth heads?
Uh, yeah, it's a kind of a rite of passage down in Florida. You got at least
Yeah.
wrestle one alligator,
Yeah. Or a meth head.
it's just one of them things. But no, I grew up in Florida and I had a really easy childhood, honestly. I wasn't poor, wasn't rich, middle class, and um, I had a father who was 20 years in the Navy. And obviously my mom, helped out all the time. Younger sister grew up in Tarpon Springs for a while there. Dad passed, I think, when I was like 12 or 13. Um, and then, it's just my mom who had to put up with a teenage boy and, my sister at the same time. So she had a fun time at it. Um, really didn't get in any trouble until about high school, when everybody starts, kind of trying to be, little troublemakers and stuff, especially down there in Florida. But we, kind of went through and it was a very easygoing childhood. Here and there, a little bit of trouble, but nothing too crazy.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and it's so funny too, because like when I mean, you probably had the same experience when you were in basic, but it's like the first couple days or weeks of basic, and you're all sitting there with, everybody else that's in your class or your platoon or company or whatever. And I remember when we were in 30th on Sand Hill, um, you're from everybody's from different parts of the country, and they grew up different lifestyles and whatever. And I remember sitting there doing whatever. I don't know what we were doing, probably nothing, but we were just sitting there and, the drill sergeant had left us alone. He kicked rocks for a little bit and we were kind of just, why are you in? Why are you in? Why are you? I was locked up or I was, so and then we went around the room and then they got to me and I was like, yeah, I never been to jail. I never, I smoked weed a couple times when I was in high school, but nothing crazy. I never really, you know, got in trouble at all. But yeah, I mean did you have any experience like that in basic with, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whenever drill sergeants left, I always thought it was a trap. I always thought they were just like hiding in the ceiling tiles. I was terrified.
our psychos?
I Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I talked to. I had a We had a guy there who joined when he was 18 because I joined when I was 17. So I had my mother sign off, stuff like that. So, but we had a guy there that was 18 years old. And God, I can't remember where he's Louisiana, I think backwoods of Louisiana or something like that. And he has not seen a African American ever in his life. Somehow, some way, didn't know how it happened. And like when he told us that, I was just blown away. Like the
Yeah.
lifestyles of the different lifestyles, like the people from the city, the people from the backwoods. I was like, man, we're just a bunch of idiots sitting here. Different lifestyles. I don't know how in the hell we're going to get through this.
Like-minded idiots. Yeah, I thought it was really funny. I had a couple people who they've never been on an airplane before, besides
Oh
going
yeah.
to basic. Like going to basic training was their first time on an airplane, which I thought was crazy. Because again, people are raised different, but
Mhm.
it's super interesting, and that's one amazing thing about the military, in my opinion, is they take a bunch of people that you would have never thought ever in your life you would be friends with, and they
Mhm.
end up becoming your best friends. Black, white, Chinese, whatever
Yeah.
nationality they are, you all end up being, really the best of friends. So you know, that's awesome. All right. So what led you to join? Was it your dad's 20 years? Was it your boost of patriotism? Did you get in trouble? Like what led you to walk into an army recruiting office?
Uh, so I think I was my recruiter's wet dream, honestly. It was so easy for him. So, obviously the father being in the Navy, that had, a part in it.
Mhm.
I knew I didn't want to be in the Navy because, I'm straight. No.
That's gonna go right over
Um,
some people's heads.
yeah. It's just, the choices out there was, Army, Air Force, and Marines. So, I was thinking about it. Most of my family has been either in the Navy or the Marines.
I
So I
don't know.
kind of
Hold
pinned it
on.
down a little
Is
bit.
that I don't know. I'm sorry. Keep going. There was a random bubble that just popped up on my screen. Keep going. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're good. You're good. But yeah, so I think with the nail in the coffin, one day I was in like middle school or something, and it was like bring your dad to work day or something like that. And of course, one of the dads was an Army recruiter, and he knew what he was doing. He came in that middle school, and his, at the time I believe it was BDUs.
Oh,
Yeah, it was BDUs or something like that, and talked about how it was so great and you could blow stuff up, and as a child sitting in middle school, listening to this dude in a uniform tell me I could blow stuff up, I was hooked.
such a weird audience to.
Yeah.
Such a weird
But I mean,
audience.
he set it up for the ones and that were coming in after him. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I went and went when I was 17 to an Army recruiter in Virginia because that's where my mom was living at the time, and I had to have her sign off. And I didn't graduate high school. I got a GED when I was in high school, dropped out, just decided to work.
Mhm.
Um, so, the Air Force was out of the question. They just want smart people. I didn't know how to read, a big thing. And then I went to go talk to the Marines and the Army. And funny enough, the Marines were out at lunch.
Mm.
Uh, so the section they had an Air Force office, a Marine office, and an Army office. And went in the Air Force one first, and they were like, "Yeah, you're stupid. Get out." All right, cool. I go to the Marines, and they had just taken lunch. So I was like, "Oh, they're locked up." And some Army guy saw me, and he was like, "Hey, come on in, man. We'll talk about it. You can go back to them if you really want to be a Marine." Kind of chalking it up.
Yeah.
I walked in and I said, "Hey, man. I want to do this. I don't really care what branch. I don't really care what job, but I want to be in the Army." And he's like, "Well, what do you love doing?" "Hunting, fishing, stuff like that. I've heard some dude back in middle school tell me I could blow shit up." He was like, "Boy, do I have a job for you."
Yeah.
All right, sick. You know, like I said, that was his wet dream, and it took all but 2 months to get me in the Army.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I feel like I've heard that, that's that the Marines were out to lunch or your whoever was out to
Mhm.
lunch. I definitely have heard that before.
Yep.
But yeah, I didn't really have too much of a similar yeah, I didn't really have a similar experience. I mean, I knew I wanted to join. The Marine Corps told me no because I had tattoos, or I have tattoos that went too close to my wrist line.
Mhm.
They were like super stingy back in the day, but it was 2017, but they were super stingy at the time. And the Marine Corps recruiter actually handed me a business card to get a laser tattoo removal. And the guy was like, "All right, yeah, if you go get 2 inches of or yeah, two finger lengths worth of tattoo removed, then you can join the Marine Corps." I'm like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Navy, I get seasick, so that was out.
Mhm.
That was a quick, same thing with the Air Force, man. I just wasn't smart enough. I didn't score high enough. But definitely glad I landed on the Army. I mean, both of my grandfathers and my uncle were in the Army. Skipped my dad, but
Mhm.
yeah, my original MOS was 88 Mike, which was a truck
Ooh,
driver, which was
yeah. Ugh.
but I ended up landing an infantry gig, and I left home to go to basic. I had like 6 days, which was nuts. My parents were pissed about that because 6 days,
Oh
like
yeah.
that's it, quick, done. I was out. But
Mhm.
yeah, I always enjoy hearing different stories about how somebody how'd you get in, so. But it's so funny the way we talk about it is like how'd you get in, prison, or we share prison stories and why are you in?
Yeah.
Why are you locked up here? But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Bunch of degenerates.
yeah, really, especially infantrymen. They're the
Oh yeah.
just.
Oh,
But,
for sure.
so what was your thought before basic training? What did you watch videos? Did you have somebody that you knew that was in infantry basic training? So what was your thought process before going
Yeah,
SAM?
so I knew somebody, so like pretty much like a brother of mine who took me in when I was in Florida. My mom moved to Virginia. His brother was named Robbie Dick, and he was an infantryman in Iraq. back in like 2005. And he told me whenever I told him I was interested in the Army way back in the day and stuff, and he basically said, "Listen, you can, that's great if you join a branch, but just remember, don't be a pogue."
Yeah.
And so, at the time I didn't know what it was, which, people other than grunt.
Mhm.
So M-Tree is, the way to go. And he's like, yeah, basically it's like, joining the Army to be a burger flipper. And I was like, wow, I don't want to do that. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be interested. So I kind of got talked up a little bit on it. I kind of already knew what it was. Um, I didn't know what it entailed until I got there, obviously. Like no one ever does. You just play it in your head over and over, like what's going to happen. You just get the worst case scenario, of course. And it's even worse than that. So, I was not prepared at all. I think he kind of set me up. He's like, yeah, you don't need to bring your phone. Like they have phones there for you, and you'll be able to write, and your family will be able to send you whatever you need. Like if you need a blanket, and I was like, oh yeah, that's. He kind of
It's
set
need a
me up.
blanket.
Yeah, yeah. He was like, yeah, if you don't like the blankets there, you can have your family send you a blanket.
Yeah.
And yeah, that didn't go over well.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely a rude awakening, man. Like I remember in my class, a lot of people had done like ROTC, because they were going to commission after they did basic or after college or whatever, the
Mhm.
smart people. But so they did have a little bit of a military taste before coming to basic. But I remember I had no, I never been yelled at. I never been yelled at like that before. I never was I was never woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning, seriously,
Mhm.
but just little things that you're not, you know, culture shock, like crazy. I never, you know, not, I don't can't think of a lot of people that have, unless you're prior service and you went to another basic training before. But like everybody, the things that you do in basic training, people don't grow up like that. I mean, unless there's somebody out there, and let me know that if your mom or dad woke you up at 3 a.m. with pots and pans and throwing trash cans and stuff just for you to go stand outside and then 5 minutes later go back in and go back to sleep, let me know. But I can put
Yeah.
money on it that not a lot of people had that experience growing up. Um,
No, and if they do, they need to call Child Protective Services.
yeah, they need to be
Um,
locked up, arrested.
yeah, yeah, that one would be rough. Yeah, no, it's definitely a culture shock, and I was not ready for it whatsoever.
No, no, it's a lot. It was definitely a lot. But okay, cool. So during, I got a bunch of interesting things. So I want to hear you first. During basic training, what was your mindset?
During basic training, my mindset was I'm gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, like I said, I was 17 years old. They partnered me up with a, God, was he 34-year-old? They did it intentionally. So he's just like, the older one, kind of seasoned. They did it so they could say the younger guy and the oldest guy can do it. But
Mhm.
I got there. He looked like he didn't care about any of this. And I just was freaking out. My mindset was, I don't know if I can do this,
Mhm.
honestly. And I tell you what, it stuck with me for the first couple of weeks of I don't know I can do this, because their whole job is to break you down to zero and build you back up. And boy, it didn't take them long to break me down to zero at all. It
Thank
was fast.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, definitely similar story. I besides the 34-year-old part, but yeah, it was like probably like I don't remember week two. A lot of the guys that are gonna watch this or listen to this that went to basic training, if they were in my platoon, they're probably gonna like message me about this. But
Mhm.
probably like week two, man, I was just like, I'm done. I was like, this,
Mhm.
I don't really think, I thought it was like a test trial. And I remember going into I remember seeing my drill sergeant, who I don't know if he's still in. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm not gonna say his name. But
Mhm.
I think he might be doing like cool stuff. But I remember
Yeah.
talking to him, and long story short, in the most respectful way possible, which terrified everybody because the nice drill sergeants, the way they speak, are usually the most terrifying.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I remember him telling me, he was like, "Your weapon is still dirty. You're not leaving. Leave. Like get out of the office." But obviously with a little more tone and expressionism he had. But and
Mhm.
after that, man, I kind of went back outside into the bay and and just kind of kept it going. I didn't really uh, expect to stay. I mean, the physicality of it wasn't really that. I don't think the physicality of it. Yeah, obstacle courses definitely were like a little bit of a punch in the gut for me because I never did that stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
who was a Boy Scout? Who was a Cub Scout? I didn't do none of that. I did absolutely none of it. Um,
Mhm.
so the obstacle course is definitely running. I mean, I grew up playing sports, so the running was okay. Um, but weapons.
Mhm.
So I'm from New York. Okay. New York's law with weapons has always been a joke. It's always
Yeah.
been a joke. So, and my dad, who's in law enforcement,
Mhm.
never let me hold a gun. I held BB guns or airsoft guns or whatever, but I never did any of that stuff. Shooting or hunting or whatever. Um, and I'll never forget. This is such like a New Yorker thing that happened to me with all of the hillbillies I went to basic training with grew up in Texas and North Carolina and the mountains or whatever. But we joked about it at the time.
Mhm.
But I remember we were laying down at a range. I think we were zeroing, and we had iron sights or whatever. And I was putting the rounds in the magazine. I loaded it up, you know, I'm sitting down there and I'm looking at the target and I could see it, the whole lollipop effect, obviously with the iron sights or whatever. And and I remember just pulling the trigger and nothing was happening. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is not my fault. This is the weapon's fault. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
turn around and I kind of have my drill sergeant come over or whatever. And it was the same guy that told me to shut up and get back to cleaning. And he like gets really quiet. He like gets down to me. He gets like really quiet. He's like, "Your weapon is still unsafe." So I missed the first 5 rounds of my first ever zero of an M4 first ever time holding it, and I missed my first 5 rounds because they never left the weapon because the weapon was unsafe, and I never switched it to semi. So uh, that's going to be a nice roast session in the comments when this video goes. But you live and you learn. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. It's I think mine was a little opposite. Like, I obviously from Florida, we knew guns. I mean,
yeah.
it was obvious, but my physicality was a little opposite. Like, I think whenever I got there, I did a total of 18 push-ups. And I think at the time you had to do like 42, something like that.
Yeah.
So I did like 18 push-ups and I could not run. I mean, I'm not a runner right now either, but whenever I got on the range, that was where I thrived. And I loved it. But yeah, that physicality of it, I definitely got stronger there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it was a little opposite for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I was always, the guys that grew up with weapons. I definitely always asked them for tips, and there was guys that were I mean, they were just nasty with it. They could, you know, 40 out of 40 every single time, man. Like they were just nuts. So shout out to those dudes, man. Those guys. I still keep in touch with a couple of them, obviously since this podcast came out. So it's nice to get back in touch with those dudes. But um, all right, and then after basic training, what was your mindset? Did you jump for joy? When did you get, what month did you graduate? Do you remember? Long time ago.
Yeah. Oh gosh. August, September,
Okay.
somewhere
Yeah, I
around there.
graduated in September too.
Yeah, yeah. No, when I graduated, because I turned 18 in basic training, so I came back out. I thought I was the hottest shit in the world.
Yeah.
And I strutted my shit like I was the hottest shit in the world. Um, that was on leave before I went to Fort Bliss for my first duty station. And there I got another reality check that I was not the hottest shit in the world, nowhere close to it.
Yeah.
But I was so happy to finally get out of base trade. Looking back on it now, I mean, I'd probably go back if I could, keep where I'm at right now. I'd go back just to see, experience it again. And it sounds wild, especially to a lot of people who are like, man, that sounds like it sucks.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't mind experiencing it again, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, obviously, when I was stationed at Benning, I had a bunch of people that I knew from either Colorado or basic that I went through that are now drills. And
Mm-hmm.
and Sand Hill wasn't a far drive from where my unit 128 was. It was just I was on main post and you just had to, I don't know, it was like 10 minutes or 12 minutes to Sand Hill. And I witnessed, what basic training is like now, and it's changed. It changed
Yeah.
when I was there 6 years ago, so it definitely changed big time when you went 15 years ago. So it
Yeah.
was cool for
Probably
me to
been.
see. It was cool for me to see it from like a, standing off on the side, letting the drills do their thing, obviously, and just seeing, the trainees. They're not privates anymore; they're trainees. So
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta be sensitive. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully one day I can have a drill on here to talk about it. That'd be kind of cool.
Yep.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, definitely was super happy to be done with it. You know.
Mhm.
Okay, so you head to Bliss.
Yeah.
How
Uh,
was being heavy or armored for your first duty station?
so believe it or not, I was in Third Brigade, and they were just standing up, and it was the only light infantry brigade at Fort Bliss. They do not exist anymore.
Mm.
I was part of Third Brigade 141, Straight and Stalwart, who actually went to Carson. It was one of our sister battalions.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so I went there and we were standing up the brigade, and I was the 18th soldier in the brigade. That's how fresh the brigade was. So I kind of went in from basic training to my immediate supervisor was an E6 Staff Sergeant Hughes. And he was, I guess, my team leader per se, but as an E6, he should have been a squad leader or platoon sergeant at the time. It was just such a weird thing, and they filled it up so quickly. So I feel like I got a little bit of a cheat kind of going into a brigade standing up. I wasn't, I mean, what you would call haze nowadays,
Mhm.
because I was one of the first people there.
Yeah.
So I got to Fort Bliss. It was too damn hot. 110 degrees all the damn time.
Such.
Um, yeah, no trees, no sun. I knew no Spanish. And if you don't know where Fort Bliss is, El Paso, Texas, right next to Juarez, Mexico.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, and again, I was 18 years old. No car, no idea, and it was definitely an experience for the first, I'd say, 6 months.
Hmm.
Being in that brigade and that battalion, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Huh. And then how how long after until you deployed?
So it was about a year. So I got out, was that 2009 from basic training. About the end of 2010, we were spinning up. So a year, a little over a year. I think we left the end of 2010 to Afghanistan. Most of my time was 2000, end of 2010, 2011.
I was in middle school.
Yeah, I'm obviously not gonna. I'm sure people can put the math together, but I'm not gonna reveal my age here. But yeah, I get a lot of that now.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
some of my peers, they're like, "Yeah, I was talking to somebody today, and they're like, yeah, man, I was in middle school when you graduated high school or graduated basic." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you don't need to rub that in my face."
Yeah. Shut up, man.
Um, yeah, yeah, I turn my hearing aids off real quick so I can't
Yeah.
hear you. But yeah, no, yeah, 2010, 2011.
So that's
Uh,
for the people listening or watching, that's prime GWAT. I would say, in my opinion. I didn't go during that time. I have no idea. I was too busy trying to figure middle school out. But from people that have been in it, that was prime the global war on terror. So we're definitely going to get into that.
yeah.
Okay. So something that I want to start doing on this show or episode or whatever. If you can remember,
Mhm.
I want um I want your funniest, okay, top three funny barracks moments. Please, for dear God, be cognizant
Mhm.
of what we put because this is going online, obviously. Uh,
Yeah.
you can use keywords that I'm pretty sure other infantrymen watching this will understand and can probably figure out these funny things. But top three funny stories as a Joe or in the barracks or whatever.
Okay. So I'll go kind of down the line, I guess, from Bliss to Campbell to Carson here. But when I got to Fort Bliss first, I remember one of those, first 18 that we were, was an older vet that, was in Iraq invasion. He was in the barracks. We lived in these double wide trailers in the middle of the desert. Um, and we had three people to a double wide trailer, and they were split in half. So single wide or whatever you want to call it. And I remember, God, I think it was like my first week. And I'm sitting out on the front porch at night because it's finally like only 90 degrees. And I look down the way and I see a lot of movement and I see sand flying. And I go over there, and long story short, there was this guy, I think it was like an E5 in the barracks, and he had been tanked. He was drinking all night. And he was digging what he thought was a foxhole, ended up being just a massive hole. And every time someone came to try to pull him out, like his buddies, he had an e-tool. If people don't know e-tool, entrenching tool, you can, pull it sideways, kind of make an L shape. He would pull it sideways, make an L shape, and go for people's ankles
Oh my God.
as they were trying to pull him out of the
That
hole.
would have killed. That would have hurt
Yeah.
so bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was like, nah, I'm not about that. I don't know this guy. I'm brand new. I don't want to deal with that. And so eventually the MPs show up. Staff duties trying to get them out. The MPs show up. The military police. And when I say this man took like 3 tasers and took on about 4 or 5 MPs, like dude, golden glove boxer. I mean, it was wild. And he was a big guy, 230, probably 6 foot, something like that. And that was one of my first experiences in the barracks. And I was like, well, this is where I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably one of my first funniest experiences I've had at the barracks. I think Campbell was a big one for me. It kind of staying.
Hold on. What unit were you in?
So I was a Rakasan. Everybody hates us until you are us. Third Brigade.
Cult.
Yeah, it's a cult. I know it's a cult. Hey, man, I had to do it. Got the Tory.
Oh my God,
yeah.
Dude. Hold on, time out. Okay, so funny thing about the Rock, I was never a Rakasan. I was never at the 101st. People watching this or listening to it can definitely back me up on this. We got to Afghanistan. There was everything. We didn't even relieve the 101st. We relieved the 82nd.
Yep.
On Bagram. And I remember walking around Bagram and just on a HESCO barrier or a T-wall or a door to go into a building was just a spray painted Tory. And I'm like, these guys are nuts. And then it didn't help when we got when we got Barksdale. Who else was a rocket?
So I think me, Barstow, there was one other. God, I can't remember for the life of me, because I know our platoon sergeant Barracks. He was Strike, I believe, or Blackheart, which is like
Ochoa?
What's that?
What about Ochoa?
Ochoa. Yeah, no, Ochoa. Yeah. Yeah, I believe he was a
rocket. It didn't help that we got those guys, that they just would not shut up about being a Rakasan, dude. They would not shut up.
We're cool. We're a cult. Yeah. I know I'm out of the cult now, so I understand that, I was brainwashed. But while you are a Rakasan, you think, well, you're better than everybody else. You strut your stuff, and the tagging you were talking about, that red spray painted Tory, like I said, the Tory I have, we were told while we were deployed, part of our packing list, what we had to bring with us on deployment was a stencil. Insane. And you would go to your supply and get red spray paint.
Psychopaths.
And you were required to keep that on you while you were at the FOB. And you were told, as long as it wasn't like damaging government property or anything like that. So like you said, kind of T-walls, the barriers, some vehicles, we were told, you tag it. This is ours. We live here. And I was like, all right. So
breaking news, that's a cult.
Yeah, we were cold. And it's when I got to 101st and I became part of the Rockasans, I kind of how I was in Fort Carson. I got there and immediately deployed. But I came back, and at the time, because I immediately deployed, I wasn't aerosol qualified.
Yeah.
So I finally got to the barracks. It was my first time getting in the barracks, and something crazy. Like, everybody was drinking, obviously having a good time. And they had a rear D or rear detachment. So the guys that didn't deploy, they would go to aerosol school. So, rappelling out of helicopters, hooking up cargo to helicopters, learning knots, stuff like that. And I remember pulling everything I owned in 2 duffel bags and a rucksack and walking up to the barracks kind of towards the nighttime and seeing a guy hitting a beer bong on the top of the barracks, and he was hanging off the barracks. And after he killed the beer bong with the people up there, he would shoot straight down this rope all the way down the side of the barracks. And being intoxicated, I was like, oh God, he's gonna hit the ground, but he was able to stop right before he hit the ground. And I was like, wow, I don't want to go do aerosol school now. This is wild.
Took it too serious. They took it too far. But that's
Oh yeah, yeah,
that's like that's the army, man. That's maybe not the army. I can't speak for the army, but that's the infantry, man. Just
yeah.
complete disregard for their own body.
Yep.
And they're just down to have a good time. But definitely the best
Yeah,
you'll ever meet by far. But all right.
yeah.
So you got Bliss, you gave me Campbell, Carson. So you come to Carson, I think, were you an E5 or an E6?
I was an E5. Came to Carson as an E5. I came with Jesse Barksdale from Campbell at the same time. We left at the same time. Barksdale had a kid en route to Afghanistan, so we made it to Kuwait. He ended up going back home, and I ended up going forward, and he joined us later on. But I was an E5 coming to you guys, and once I landed there, it was I was happy to be welcomed in the way I was, especially, we both know Sergeant Barrows. He was a hard ass, but he was a funny guy, and he was true to his men. He was loyal. Yep. But, him being the complete opposite, coming from the 101st Strike, or I'm pretty sure he was Strike, he hated that I was a Rakkasan. So there was a little bit of break in there.
Dude, you couldn't even say the word Rakkasan around him, or else he would have lost his mind.
He would have and he was a big guy. He was a big guy. You couldn't
help that
take him.
Everybody was on pre-workout too. The whole deployment was on pre-workout.
Oh God, he was snorting that stuff. It was wild. He was a big guy, and I knew I couldn't take him, so I came to you guys off of a. Also, I was, at the time, I was fat, and hey, it happens. I came off a knee surgery, and I was recovering, so I was like, I can do this. Came there, and I was like, man, these guys are set up, because I remember Sergeant Stanton, one of the squad leaders we had. He saw me. He's like, yeah, man, you'd be a good squad leader if you weren't such a fat ass. And I was like, man, yeah, that kind of fucking hurt. So yeah, Barrows was the one to have.
What a guy.
Hey man, that stuck with me.
He knows. Listen, man. He knows. I just got off the phone with him too. He knows how to motivate you. He was the first person. He was the first person from Chosen Company that I laid eyes on when I got picked up at Carson from battalion. I was a brand new guy, and I got picked up, and obviously, Chosen Company knew that I was coming to first, or Chosen Company knew I was coming to them. And I guess they dwindled it down to first platoon. So he was a lucky winner to come pick me up from battalion. And we'll one day he will be on, and we'll talk my experience with Stanton. But
he's an intimidating guy. I mean,
he is he's great guy though.
He's awesome.
All right. So one thing that's one of the funniest moments that you had while a part of the Praetorians?
God, it's so hard to pick. Man, that was
I feel like Barksdale is involved in one of them. Barksdale is, to this day, but he's one of my really, really good friends, but he's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life.
So I can't remember much of. I remember the night, and I'm pretty sure my wife's gonna laugh in the background. But when we lived in Fort Carson up at Colorado Springs, I used to throw Super Bowl parties. And right. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah.
And so Jesse Barksdale is a tank when he drinks. He goes hard. It's infantry world, that happens. And he got so sloshed that he passed out downstairs, and he was safe and stuff. So we decided, what, let's just go ahead and put him upstairs. I had a, upstairs bedroom that we were using. And in hindsight, probably wasn't a good idea, him being that drunk. I had, my gun room. I had a bunch of guns in the room, and a couch in there. Yeah. Yeah. And so we threw him on the couch in there, and we kind of just left him until the morning. And he woke up in the morning, and he opened the door, and he looked me dead in the eyes and he goes, "Hey man, I think one of your dogs peed on me while I was sleeping."
Oh,
So what the hell? What do you mean one of the dogs? So the dogs weren't near you. And he's like, "No, definitely one of them peed on me." I said, "Jesse, you sure you didn't pee on yourself, man? You were pretty drunk." He's like, "No, I don't do that. There's no way." And to this day, he will
yeah.
promise you it was one of my dogs. Now, he was behind a door with an electronic lock. So my dogs would have had to know the code, first of all, open the door by putting the code in. It was also a reinforced door. So it was a hardened door.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
Jumped up on him,
What an idiot.
peed on him on the couch, left, and then close the door behind them and lock it.
All a dog.
But
Your dog did
yeah,
that for sure.
yeah, no, I still to this day haven't caught. I got cameras now. Like honestly, I have to know if it happens.
Yeah.
But to this day, and if you know you got Jesse Barksdale on, I promise you, ask him if what happened. He will tell you my dog's peed on
Yep.
him.
He,
Yeah,
he's the funniest, seriously, one of the funniest people ever. I mean,
Mhm.
just is I think it's his accent too. It's Tennessee or Mississippi. Oh,
Mississippi,
God.
yeah, and then he came from Tennessee, which isn't any better, obviously, with
No,
the
no,
accent. And
it's
then,
not.
but yeah, he is by far one of the funniest guys I know for sure.
I got stories about him, me and him on deployment, not on deployment, that are hilarious. But one day he will be on.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's go deployment number one.
Okay.
Deployment number one, is that the deployment where you got your Purple Hearts?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So both Purple Hearts were on that deployment. That deployment, hell and the funnest time I've ever had. But yeah, so that deployment, Logar Province, at a little cop called Barak. Um, and we would transport, or we'd go take turns at a little ECP, so entry checkpoint, down the road about 5 or 6 miles down a hardball road called Route Tampa, which is known for its IEDs. And my first Purple Heart I got while I was there was from an IED we hit in the wintertime, which, believe it or not, it snows there. And yeah, we were in the lead vehicle. I was the gunner with a crow, and which is an electronic gun up top, so it was inside. Luckily for this, and we hit I think it was a 200-pound IED.
Okay, so
Uh,
quick pause. For the people who don't know what an IED is, it is an improvised explosive device. Um, a piece of trash. Those people at that time were so brilliant with how they did that kind of stuff, right? They would stick it in Coke cans, and the whole country is just one big, pretty much trash can. So there's trash all over the place, right? Did you guys ever figure out what it was exactly? Was it a wire?
yeah, so it was a command wire. So it was a wire to the IEDs. Sorry, hounds are going crazy. It was a wire to the IEDs that was ran almost a half a mile long. And it was a copper wire, so super conductive. And it was ran to, so what was in it, the explosive they call is HME, homemade explosives, and these blue water can jugs, and they're about 25 pounds a piece. And I say I got hit with a 200 pounder. Luckily, only 100 pounds went off. The 100 pounds that were under it. So it was 4 cans on top and 4 cans on bottom. So they were stacked. And when the IED went off, the top 4 went off and the bottom 4 didn't. So I got super lucky. I was also in a Max Pro, which is like a beefed up, huge military vehicle with a mine roller to help with, different types of IEDs. But yeah, it was command detonated around a curve on Route Tampa, and it was dug under the road, probably about 10 feet.
Hmm. Wow. What what was your what was that like? Explosion goes
So
off. Do you remember a lot or?
I don't remember a lot during the explosion. I do remember before it, I was sitting there and I was listening to something on an iPod. I had an old school iPod listening to it. I was looking at the gun. We're scanning. I was the first vehicle, so I was looking ahead of us. And then, boom. And I remember fragments. of what happened during. I remember coming to and looking down and seeing I was covered in blood. So immediately was freaking out and everything was hurting on me. And at the time I had a helmet camera, but the video went out. So there was audio. So I can look back on the audio and kind of piece it back together. But I remember like my chest was on fire. And I was like, man, I'm hit. Oh God, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And my team leader, Kyle Femuth, who's out now, he's doing good. Helped drag me out, and then kind of went in and out of consciousness. The next thing I remember was getting flown to FOB Shank, which was a huge FOB at the time. Medevaced over there, and I was butt naked again in the winter, on a litter, so like a big bed that everybody carries, basically, a stretcher, if you would. And I was coming off a helicopter, and for some reason, man, they kept me under that helicopter, the down prop, that downwind, butt naked on a stretcher with everybody staring at me in the middle of the winter. Sorry, my wife is in the background laughing right now. So
Funny.
I had,
Funny, but it's not.
yeah, no, it's funny now.
Yeah.
So I guess what had happened, obviously, I hit the IED. I was the gunner. We had my team leader, my driver, Dane Ramsey. He broke every bone in his left foot. And then my team leader, he was good. His M4 actually got bent to where he couldn't fire it anymore, use it. The IED, the concussion alone, where it was pinned, bend his weapon, which is huge. And then I had our CO in the back, our commanding officer. And I guess where all the blood came from was he had his weapon with the muzzle facing down and his buttstock facing up. And most people, when they're riding in those, are really cramped. So you put your weapon in between your legs and you're sitting there and just talking, leaning over. Sometimes you're like resting your buttstock, your weapon on your chin. And when that IED went off, his M4 came up and hit his chin and basically made it explode and just started bleeding everywhere. He landed on top of me, and that's where all the blood came from, where I freaked out from. Luckily for me, I cracked 2 ribs. I had a traumatic brain injury, a TBI. And then, I was rocked pretty good for a couple of weeks. A lot of memory, a lot of headaches, vision, stuff like that. But I was not the worst injury. Like I said, our driver, Dane Ramsey, he ended up getting out of the Army for the injuries. Our commanding officer had to have just his chin had to be sewed all back together. But it was a wild experience.
And you were how old?
20. No, 19 or 20. Yeah, 19 or 20 at the time.
Yeah, that was that how early on in your deployment was that?
That was about halfway through my deployment, actually. Let's see. Yeah, about halfway through my deployment, somewhere around there. It was the winter time in Afghanistan, so I can't pinpoint when it was, but I felt like I'd driven down that route so many damn times. By that time, it just all kind of meshed together. But it was definitely a good couple months into my deployment. So we were well seasoned by that time.
Wow. Yeah, that okay, so you got a Purple Heart from that. Your ARCOM with V. We talked a little bit about it last night. Walk us through that day when it happened. Did it happen before or after the
After.
Okay.
After.
So
Yeah.
the IED.
Yes. God. So yeah, it was probably 3 or 4 months after that IED.
Okay. All of your deployments, were they 12 months or 15?
So I had a bunch of I had some 9 month. I had the 9-month with you guys, but this one was a 12-month deployment.
Oh, okay.
So it was a 12-month deployment. We had our R&R in between, which was great. Thank God for that. But yeah, this one was a solid 12 months, and then it varied. I got to you guys a little late, so sometimes shoot a month shy, something like that.
All right. So yeah, walk us through that ARCOM with V event.
Yeah, so that one's a little more vivid. So God, we had gone out on a patrol from the ECP, the entry checkpoint, in the JSS. It's called Ibrahim Kill. It's a small, tiny little shithole of a place right at the mouth of the Tangi Valley in Afghanistan. And basically, we controlled a lot of cars coming in and out, searching them for weapons, stuff like that. But one of our platoons, I didn't go out on this mission, but they went out and they found two guys in possession of a Hellfire missile that fell off of a Apache helicopter. So like a live Hellfire missile that fell off an Apache helicopter. Come to find out it was from 10th Mountain, the unit before us. I guess it dislodged or something like that. So they were obviously trying to take it apart and stuff, these Afghans. And so they rolled these Afghans up and captured them at night and brought them back to where we were staying. Where we were at was in the middle of nowhere. And we were holding on to them, trying to get the Afghan police officers to come out and, take them away. But we were so far out and it was so hard to get to us that after 24 hours, we had to release these guys. It's just rules we had, rules of engagement, rules of custody, stuff like that, POWs. We had to release them. So we released these guys. And as soon as we released them, they walked out our front gate. And this guy was immediately on his phone. And he was on his phone. He was looking off in the distance. He looked back at us. He was looking off in the distance. We knew what was going to happen. So we all got up on this HESCO wall. We got our weapons facing out. And sure enough, off in the distance, we hear a boom. We know what it is. It's IDF, indirect fire, mortars or rockets. And so we're waiting for this thing to come in. Everybody's screaming incoming. Everybody gets down. And we hear the explosion. Now, funniest thing is that first explosion landed right on top of the two guys we just released. They effectively called for fire on their own position.
Idiots.
Smoke, done. So, we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. But they fired probably another 7 or 8 rounds at us. And after that first round, they were extremely accurate. So we had Afghan National Army with us, ANA, and a lot of them were trying to get to this bunker, IDF bunker, to take safety, but they were just on point with these rounds for some reason that day. And a lot of our ANA took some casualties, shrapnel, concussions. We had a couple of them. The shrapnel went in, punctured their lung, and had a collapsed lung. So we're going back and forth. Every time a round goes off and lands, we run back up on the wall, start to trying to find out where they're at. Another round comes up, we run back to the bunker. So we did that for a while, and eventually it stopped. So during that time, I think we had 6 or 7 ANA that were injured pretty badly. So we called in a medevac helicopter to come in and pick them up. And then we had 2 or 3 of our own guys. One of them was the sniper squad leader, or the recon squad leader. He took shrapnel to the back, and he didn't even know he took shrapnel to the back until someone said he was bleeding. Pretty big piece. And so we were trying to get people in and out. Once that bird, the helicopter came into our small base, we started receiving RPG fire, rocket-propelled grenades. They were trying to shoot our medevac bird down. So, of course, we run up to the wall. At the time, I was a machine gunner. I had what is called a Mark 48, which is a 7.62 caliber, what we call squad automatic weapon. And we just started laying the scunion down. Started laying down suppressive fire. I was able to identify what I call a smoke trail, but a puff of smoke, I guess you would see from the backblast of the RPG. So we just started laying hate on those guys as the bird came in. And they shot one rocket, no joke, 5 foot under that bird. They went right under that bird. I remember looking up and seeing the helicopter come in, and they have a crew chief that's hanging out the side for landing. And that rocket went under the bird, and I heard it. He saw it, and I saw it. And I looked up at him, and he made eye contact with me, and you could see he was just a ghost. He was like, holy shit. So we ended up going from the wall back and forth. taking dudes to see the medevac bird. They had to come in like 3 different times. Once we got everybody medevaced, I guess the adrenaline started wearing off for me. So I got hit in the hand somewhere from some shrapnel. It was more superficial than anything else, but I didn't realize like my chest was starting to hurt and I was starting to get dizzy. And I was seeing those black dots, whenever you lift something heavy or something like that. I was just seeing them randomly. And man, I just remember sitting in that bunker. And the next thing I know, I got my team leader over me just smacking me in the face, like, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. And sure enough, they had to send another helicopter to come get my ass. And I don't remember much of that. I remember waking up in the hospital after that. That one kind of, the traumatic brain injury on that one kind of hit me harder, I guess, than the IED did. But it was just so much adrenaline at the time and so much chaos. I just remember having to run people to a helicopter, run back, shoot at whatever I could shoot at, put my gun down, run back over, grab another guy, run him back over to a helicopter, and just everything going off. And I just couldn't even tell you where that mortar round or explosion came from that pretty much knocked me out.
Shit, man. Are you having any of those effects now?
So yeah, I whenever I was saying I turn my hearing aid down, I do wear hearing aids. I did lose quite a bit of my hearing since my first deployment. I'll chalk it up to the rest of the Army too, obviously, but I think that was a big part of it. I do have some memory issues. I do get headaches here and there. I take regular medication and stuff for it, but I still feel the effects from time to time. So, ringing in the ears, the dizziness comes rarely, but it's there. And, with the Army now, they have these traumatic brain injury centers that, help you through that and occupational therapy and stuff. So that's been a great help.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the difficult thing is when you get out, the VA, and people always crap on the VA, but if you utilize the VA for these serious issues, they'll take care of you. It might take a little bit, but they'll end up taking care of you. So definitely, obviously, I mean, you obviously know because you're not stupid, but to stay on top of that when you get out. And
Yeah.
did you that firefight and the that event where you had to get medevac yourself? You guys eliminate the threat?
If we didn't eliminate them, so usually we would do something called a BDA, battle damage assessment, where after like a massive firefight like that or something like that happens, hours later, maybe under the cover of night, where we thrive, we would go out and do battle damage assessment. But we took such a hit on our security and our force that night or that evening that we couldn't do a battle damage assessment because we would have to send too many people out that wouldn't be able to protect the base at that point. So the engagements we were making were about 300 or 400 meters, which isn't crazy. You zero your weapon you're issued at 300 meters is the longest, and it may seem pretty far to some, but the scopes and technologies we have, it wasn't too crazy. I could probably tell you between everybody, we probably tagged 4 or 5 people that day. Probably, it's not one of those confirmed things. I know when we saw that RPG plume happen, everybody turned every machine gun, every Mark 19, every 50 cal, and every M4 we had and shot 203 grenade launchers at that position. So I know that guy's probably dead, long gone.
He's not around anymore.
Yeah, no. He shot that one.
Is that the scene? So again, for the people listening or watching, you can find the TV show that Jeff is on. It appeared on National Geographic. How many years ago?
Oh God. So when they did the documentary,
I remember you showed us on deployment.
Yeah. So when they did the documentary, I was at 101st. That was probably closer to 2014 or 2015 when I did the TV show. And the obviously the helmet cam footage we had was from like 2000, 10, 11, 12, something like that. So it was a couple years afterwards, and I wasn't even with the unit, nor, like I said, the unit disbanded, the brigade disbanded. So they didn't even exist anymore. The brigade had no existence whatsoever. So it was quite a while afterwards. It actually, that first team leader, Kyle Feeman, that I had, he was doing something in college, creative design or something like that, and he had a helmet cam too. Showed his professor. His professor ended up knowing a director, and that's how we kind of got in. It just kind of lined up.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, for the people listening and watching, you could find that documentary that Jeff was in on National Geographic. I looked it up on YouTube earlier. It's on YouTube. Even if you just type it in on Google, you can still find some clips, and it's pretty crazy. So,
Yeah,
you got a stomach for that kind of stuff, because it's they don't really hold back in those documentaries. You see a lot of graphic stuff, but you see the reality of it. So if you got the stomach for it, definitely check that out because it was a pretty insane um, documentary. And there's a lot out there. There's a bunch of them out there. Obviously Jeff is familiar with the Hornet's Nest. There's another crazy documentary. Restrepo.
yep.
So there's a bunch out there. If you really want to take a look into what the past 20 years for these people were like, definitely check out these documentaries because they're absolutely insane. All right. What besides your two events that you got wounded in, what is the craziest combat story that you have besides those two? Could have just been a temporary firefight, a little tick. What
So
comes to mind?
I think one of the craziest. I have two really relatively quick ones that are pretty crazy. The first, which was the first firefight I was ever in. We were part of a what they used to call an SKT, a small kill team. They don't have those anymore. It's obviously not what we do, but we did basically like a presence patrols and a really not even a platoon. We had maybe like two squads worth. And we would go out and do presence patrols. And the first day I landed was the first day I went out on patrol and was walking around, and I had eaten Afghan food before patrol, which was a horrible decision. And that's where I met one of my best friends, Kennedy. I almost shit myself on patrol. So they had to halt the patrol. I
Oh,
had to go and find a trench, which isn't uncommon in Afghanistan. People just poop wherever they want, and poop. And I saged my best friend because I was looking up and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to use my sock or my t-shirt or
yeah,
something to wipe my butt. Which is also not uncommon for infantry guys. You'll see a lot of one-socked infantry guys.
yeah,
And he pulled out a thing of baby wipes, which we know is gold
yeah.
out there. And he said, "Here, man, take this." And man, oh, it's best thing in the world.
That
But
friendship,
not.
friendship started right there.
Oh, friendship was right there. And but yeah, not 2 minutes later, that was my first firefight, and I'm so happy I took a shit when I did.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was bad. So I remember we came up on this huge field. It was like 150 meters across. And we were in tree line, and my team leader, he was point man. We were the point team, and they were like, "Hey, man, we got to move through this field. So get you guys in a wedge, go across. You're probably gonna get shot at." And I was like, "Well, this is gonna be interesting." So I'm running across this field with my team leader in a wedge, and sure enough, we get shot at. And while I'm running, before we get shot at, I was thinking, man, if they hit me, I don't care. This sucks. I'm sucking wind. I'm carrying so much weight. And that first round went off. And God, man, Usain Bolt. I was across that field so fucking fast. And then I ended up in the tree line, and I got so excited. The adrenaline was going. And I started, shooting at what I thought was the enemy. And my team leader came over and hit me in the back of the head with the helmet on, of course. And he was like, "Hey, man, shoot up there." And there was a little hill where he saw they were shooting from. So pull my Mark 48 up and start lighting it up. And I'm going off. I'm shooting so many rounds. And I'm thinking, man, I'm suppressing the hell out of these guys. And I hear another thump on the back of my helmet. And I look back up to my team leader. He goes, "Hey, dumbass, you're shooting the tree in front of you." Not 3 feet in front of me was a fucking tree, and I laid probably 150 fucking rounds into that thing.
Dude, you killed that tree.
That tree was so fucking dead. And those enemy were not suppressed at all.
No, they probably
So
stopped and laughed for a little bit too.
yeah, oh yeah, no, they were like, look at this new dumbass,
Yeah,
and that's
rookie.
exactly what it was. And then on the back end of that, actually, the end of our deployment, after everything was said and done, we were kind of walking back to our cop in an open field, and these huge grass fields. I don't remember what they were growing. It wasn't like poppy or anything, but they were growing crops. And we were walking back from a village, and the enemy pulled up a 50 cal technical behind us, a 50 cal truck. So they jerry rigged it. It wasn't like something you'd see in the army. It was a Dishka, so a 50, more than a 50 caliber, machine gun that can shoot down like helicopters, take out light vehicles. And they pulled it up. And they had it jerry rigged to the bed, and they started firing at us in this open field. And that was probably one of the scariest things I've ever heard, because being shot at by an AK or a smaller caliber round, the snaps, the booms, but that thing was thunderous. And God, man, I was scared out of my mind, because we were just laying in this grass field hoping they wouldn't hit us. And he probably laid about 100 rounds down before we finally got up and got our assholes stopped puckering, and we ran for our lives. And luckily no one was hit that day, but there was a cow in the field that took a couple 50 gallons that day. Yeah, it was rough. And we have it on helmet cam too on that one. It's actually in the documentary at the end of the episode. Yeah, so those were probably my two craziest ticks, or my two craziest firefights.
How did you guys eliminate the threat? Did you guys call in a gun run?
So
how'd that
we
day
had a JTAC with us. We were trying to get him to call in Apaches, so attack helicopters to this village, and we were firing on it, and we were doing something called a RIP process. So we were with a bunch of 173rd Airborne regiments out of, I believe, Alaska. So we were showing them where everything was, and they were brand new to this area. So we decided we weren't going to move forward on the enemy for that one, and we were going to have the JTAC try to call in an Apache helicopter. But by the time we got to cover, found out where they were firing from, had a JTAC called up, they were long gone. So they got a free shots on us. They didn't, like I said, hit any of us, luckily. So but they got free shots on us. They kind of got the new guys, spun up a little bit, and they left. And we were not able to engage that one. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take that guy out.
Wow. Yeah, that's like, and that's what month was that? You said that was that's coming
So
to
that one's had to have been
right?
September 2011, October, somewhere between September to November 2011. Yeah.
It's so you probably had how much longer left on your
3 weeks.
Wow.
I remember it. Yeah, that was our like I said, our RIP process, getting them in. That was the furthest one we went out. We had 3 weeks left.
Wow.
And I think that's another reason why it was so terrifying.
Yeah, because you're like, at this point, you're like, dude, just get me home, man.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's wild.
Yeah, that's rough. That's
Mhm.
rough. And again, you were 20, 19, which
Yeah, I think at the time I was 20
Yeah.
when that happened. Yeah.
not many 20-year-olds are witnessing stuff like that. So that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
If you can hear thumping, can you hear any sort of thumping on my end? It's my
No.
father upstairs, and it sounds like a horse stable. So
No, I can't hear anything. Luckily, I've been worrying about my dog stumping around too. So, but yeah, no, I don't hear anything.
jumping jacks, I guess he's doing. But
Staying fit.
but
I get it.
all right. Well, to lighten the mood a little bit from some traumatic combat stories, a quick funny story from our deployment. This actually goes back to the whole pooping thing before.
Yeah.
We were at a little fob. You definitely were with us, I think. Yes.
Yeah, I was with you. I think our buddy posted a picture of it recently.
He did.
Yeah.
Stump posted a picture. It's a pretty cool picture.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
the story that comes to mind when I think of this area was I went over to a very, very good friend of mine, Cody Burke. Uh,
Mhm.
his tower that he was in. I forgot who he was with. I was it Scott? I think it might
I
have been
think
Scott.
it was Scott because I had Stump and Stanton in my tower. So I think it was Scott and Burke, and then Jaime and his machine gun.
Hernandez,
Uh, at Roa.
Cadlick or Harem.
Yeah.
Cadlick or Harem. I don't remember
Yeah.
who.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So it was Burke and Scott.
yeah, I remember I was with Roa, again, another one of my best friends. I was with Roa at the entrance of the gate. Um, and I remember I went over to Burke's Tower for something. I don't know what it was for, but I had to go to the bathroom really, really, really bad. And there was no bad. I mean, there was the porta potties, but they were kind of far. So I remember you had Burke's Tower, and then you had like you were a little path walking on these HESCO barriers, and then they had a little tiny, tiny like shack that maybe was a tower. But there was nobody in it. Nobody was manning it. And I remember I went there, and this is on that little airfield, if you remember where all the Afghans
Yeah.
were parked. And
Yeah.
I remember we didn't really say anything to each other. I remember Scott was pulling security or whatever he was doing. And I remember looking at me and I was looking at Burke, but we didn't say anything to each other.
Yeah.
There's a
Just
group
direct eye
of
contact.
Afghans, yeah, just eye contact. There's a group of
Mhm.
Afghans that were like standing by one of the A&A helicopters, getting ready to spin
Mhm.
it up, turn it on. And I remember I
Mhm.
was in that shack and I had a sandbag, and it was an empty sandbag because
Mhm.
everybody had just finished filling sandbags that day. We had to fill however many.
Yeah.
Remember, I went into the shack and I dropped the drawers and I shut the door and
Yeah.
I clipped the sandbag. I rigged it somehow to pretty much hold it open so I can go to the bathroom. And
Mhm.
door was shut, man. And I remember I hear the bird turning on. I hear them start the bird. I'm like, oh, I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, all right, the Afghans are gonna go do something or whatever. And the bird spins on, man, and that rotor wash blew, I think,
Yeah.
the door off the hinges. And the
Yeah. Yeah.
door was flying. And I turn and I look at Burke, and Burke's looking right at me. All the Afghans can see me, and I'm holding
Oh,
a bag, but my ass is out, fully shown, whatever. And
yeah.
I was holding this bag, and I was like freaking out. I was like, dude, Burke, calling Burke to come shut the door. But all he did the whole deployment was just laugh at me. He never
Oh,
took
yeah.
anything I was doing serious, but I gave the Afghans a nice show, a nice piece of American ass.
So
Um,
I can't remember if Burke, but I do remember seeing you actually through our spotting scope in the tower,
yeah.
because I'm pretty sure Burke called it up over the fucking radio.
Oh,
So like I immediately, just being the way we are, not pointing a rifle at you, grabbed our spotting scope that me and Stump had. And yeah, I remember just the angle we had, I couldn't directly see, but seeing this door flopping and just seeing a flash of
yeah.
just like skin tone and you trying frantically, because I think you were mid shit,
Yeah, I
um,
was.
trying to like cover yourself at the same time shitting.
Yeah, and I remember leaving that little shack, and all the Afghans were laughing. Burke was,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this sucks, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was a horrible, horrible place, and
That was
people think we
miserable.
have running water and stuff. There is no. We
Yeah,
had wag bags. Do you remember the wag
yeah,
bags?
and
You got
I remember the wag bags, but I also remember, I don't know which tower. I think it might have been your tower. You had to
yeah.
walk through a little part of the village, like a normal
Yes.
Afghan village. You had to walk through
Yeah.
a little part of it to get to your tower. And I remember me and Roa were told by our PL, Lieutenant Sheffield, Zach,
Mhm.
and I remember he told us, he was like, all right, you guys are gonna go to, go over to tower, blah, 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 or whoever, whatever. So
Yeah.
Roa's a Mexican, so he's short and brown. I'm short. We're both short. Um, it's summertime, so I'm tan because I'm Italian and Greek. So we're both
Hey,
like
you're breaking up there a little bit.
we have we have dark skin. Can you hear me? Is that better? Hello?
You hear me, Veronis? Okay.
Sorry about that. Cut out for a second. So to continue, Roa and I, who at this time are, we're both 5'7" ish.
Yeah.
I'm tan because I'm Italian and Greek, and it's the summertime. Roa's
Mm-hmm.
Spanish, so he's brown. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember we had no interpreter with us, which was odd because we didn't speak the language. And Lieutenant
Yeah, I
Sheffield didn't
remember
send us with
this.
an interpreter. And I remember
Yeah.
uh, Lieutenant Sheffield was like, "All right, you and Veronis, go over to this tower." So me and Roa are walking, just us alone, completely alone,
Mm-hmm.
afraid. Not really afraid, but Roa had the
Yeah.
saw, and I had my M4,
Mm-hmm.
and we're walking through this Afghan village, and I remember uh, the Afghan people, and you can contest to this. The Afghan people, um, can you describe again in very simple terms, without getting too detailed or inappropriate, what a chai boy is?
So the Afghan people don't look at gender as I guess, lust. For lust for them, a male child on with a male man is okay. And what chai boys are these, which is super unfortunate, are anywhere younger child, teen child who has been designated by the Afghans that that's their I guess way of getting pleasure or lust. Really, they look at women as for children and I guess taking care of the home, and then they look at the boys for like sexual release. So a tri boy is basically a younger sexual release boy.
Yeah, disgusting.
Yeah,
Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely, absolutely disgusting. But
yeah,
with that said, you know, skin color's the same.
yeah.
Straight with me, with Roa, with the Afghans, and I remember walking through the village, and the Afghans were like coming up to us, which again, you got to keep your distance or whatever.
Mhm.
And I remember they were trying to like buy Roa. They were trying because
Yeah,
they
yeah. They
wanted
wanted
to
to buy
purchase him
Rella.
as a chai boy. They
Yeah,
wanted to purchase him, and he
yeah.
was losing it, and I was laughing but also taking it serious. It was a complete disaster. But I'll never
I
forget
remember that.
Roa's
Yeah.
temper and his
God,
accent, and then just the way he is. Man, he was not
he was trying to
not
fight.
having.
He was trying to fight. Yeah,
Yeah, he was,
and
which
uh,
and wouldn't have ended well at all. But
yeah, no, because the interpreter I think was in our tower. You guys were heading to us, and I remember hearing something. So I looked down my scope towards you guys because I was like, "Oh, I hope nothing's happening." But sure enough, you're right. There was like three Afghans. They were offering like chickens and goats and stuff. Like, bro, yeah,
yeah, dude, if Roa screwed around, man, I would have sold him for a nice piece of bread.
seriously, he was at least worth a goat and a chicken, if not more,
Yeah,
easily, easily.
yeah. That was very, very funny though. That was
Yeah,
again, man, the army and the infantry, and we make any situation that's shitty, we make it funny. We try and bring comic relief into it. That's just how we are.
yeah,
Dark sense of humor. But that was a pretty cool experience. I think that was like 2 months in, so that was we were fairly new to the country and everything like that. But
yeah, yeah. We were. God, I can't remember. We were uplift for
we were
Rangers.
we were with regiment. Yeah, we were with regiment, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and
Yeah,
that was the first time that I was actually with Roa again, but that was the first time that we actually saw something crazy because the our bird, the American helicopter, um, went to go pick up. It was a CIA. It was a CIA operator. Um,
oh yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
out, and Roa and I were at the
The
we
flight line.
we were at the
Yeah,
flight line, right at the gate. Right when the bird landed. You know, to get through to get to the operating room or the little makeshift hospital that they set up. They had to come through me and Roa. We stood on each side, and I remember that bird landed, and they pulled off they pulled off an ANA guy. They pulled off an Afghan National Army guy who had just been shot in the throat, and,
yeah.
uh, and then they pulled off a CIA guy who who had stepped on an IED, I think. Um,
Hmm.
and that was super weird, man, because that was the first time that we'd actually ever seen anything, me personally, ever seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I remember, after they had went back inside, they just really power washed the helicopter, the inside to get the blood off, and they left and they went to go get more people or whatever. But I remember after the bird left, Roa and I like looked at each other and we were just kind of in shock over seeing that. So that was again super super interesting to see. I was 20, Roa
Yeah.
22. So,
I
young,
think so. Yeah.
young.
Yeah. Young.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I think I was 26 or 27 at the time, somewhere around
yeah,
there.
and we had a fairly young platoon. We really did. We had
Yeah.
a young platoon, man. But
Yeah.
but yeah, well, we're gonna we're gonna move on to something uh, that is super important to me, and that's mental health. Did you obviously if you feel comfortable, if you don't, but if you suffer from it, what do you do to cope, man? Everybody's got it, whether it's PTSD, whether it's depression, anxiety, anything like that. Anybody that you knew that committed suicide in your 15 years, tell us a little bit about your story and everything that you got going on.
Yeah. So I guess starting with myself, yeah, 100%. I've had behavioral health issues. It's luckily for me, and I don't want to say luckily, but the way I express my I guess my anxiety or whatever. A lot of people have this. They think it's depression. The way I express it is anger. I'm a pretty temperamental person. Been trying to work on it, but I was diagnosed with PTSD, Fort Carson, actually, after our deployment. And I went a long time probably with behavioral health, mental issues after, Fort Campbell and Fort Bliss. But back in the day, behavioral health wasn't as important,
Mhm.
or I don't want to say important, but it was stressed. If you went to a behavioral health, you were basically ending your career. And that was, back in 2009 to 2013, somewhere around there. Because if you had these mental issues, you couldn't lead, you couldn't follow, you couldn't do anything. So basically, a lot of people went a long time without seeking help. Luckily, when I got to Fort Carson, between my wife and a lot of people within the platoon, convinced me to go see behavioral health. And recently, that's one of the big things for the Army. It's behavioral health. That's huge. We got to hit big on it. So, I receive care currently
Mhm.
through our behavioral health clinics here. I'm receiving care for PTSD. Um, I take anger management, or I did take anger management. Probably need to do it again. Um, and then I do a lot of sleep studies, stuff like that, because that can affect your sleep. I take some medication for sleep. But yeah, I 100% believe behavioral health is a huge concern, and it's one of those things that we got to hit head on. Pussyfooting around it's not the way to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's personally for me. And then obviously within 15 years, you're gonna have friends take their lives. You're gonna have friends that unintentionally take their lives, but probably had some issues behind what they were doing. I had a buddy of mine, Soren Adams, at 101st, big motorcycle advocate, and rode crotch rockets and stuff. And he had been through one of our 101st deployments, and he'd seen some stuff. And don't really know if he had extreme behavioral health issues, mental health issues, but remember he got out. He got his DD 214, like you were talking about and stuff, and he got out, and he never went to see behavioral health, but he would always ride that bike at 120 mile an hour like nothing could touch him. And he wrecked it and ended up killing himself the day after he got his DD 214. Now, again, I don't know if he had a lot of behavioral health issues. He was a roommate of mine in the barracks. We talked from time to time, and I know he had stuff going on, but there's a lot of people that kill themselves, and a lot of people who take certain risks
Yeah.
because of this anxiety and this depression or anger or whatever. that they don't really care for their life, and it's saddening. It's one of those things we fight with all the time. It's not worth it. It really isn't. I mean, there's always some sort of solution, and it hits home for me pretty close.
Yeah, and it's just so shitty because when you're in, and I think I mentioned this on episode one, but when you're in and you want to go to behavioral health, or you just get treated different, you get looked at different by leadership and by people in the platoon, they think you're a sissy Mary, let's just say,
Mhm.
if you go, you're just trying to get out of this, you're just trying to get out of that. But, if you've been on 7 deployments, if you haven't been on any, and you
Yeah.
feel the need to go to behavioral health, utilize it because those people are good, and,
Mhm.
the whole 22 veterans a day thing is real. Like I said, people are, they don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with their demons that they got going on. And like you mentioned before, the whole, unintentional thing, man. I mean, the bracelet, we got these memorial bracelets that a lot of people wear. And, honestly, I'm sick and tired of like collecting them at this point because I really do have so many. Um,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
person that I wear is a guy that I went to basic training with. His name is Shane Tessar.
Mhm.
He we went to basic together. We were in the same platoon, and then he went to regiment. He went to 275 up in Washington, and he did a couple deployments with them. And I mean, dude, we talked almost every single day, and we'd FaceTime. I had a trip planned to go to Washington to see him, um, and uh, and I get a text message from another one of my buddies who's in regiment. They were in the same company that I went to basic with, Herring, and my buddy Colby, and he had called me or texted me or whatever, and I remember he was like, Shane died, and I was like, I lost it on him. I
Mhm.
cursed him out. I'm like, don't ever effing joke about anything like that ever again. But and then he was like, no, seriously. And then he explained to me what happened. You know, him and his wife died together from a
Mhm.
fentanyl overdose. They did straight fentanyl. It wasn't laced with anything. They did a straight fentanyl, and they both died. So like minutes apart or whatever. I mean, they superseded the amount. You shouldn't take it at all, but they just took too
Yeah.
damn much, man, and uh and,
Yeah.
and died. So I don't know, man. He was planning on getting out. He was planning on doing this or doing that or staying in Washington or you know, but that was a huge kick in the balls, man. And then one more, but when I was back at Benning, after my infantry battalion shut down, I went to Sand Hill and I worked at 198th Brigade for a little bit before I ETS'd. And there was a guy who I spoke to every day. He was an E7, and I spoke to him. And it's super. This is more newer, so I'm not gonna say his name or anything. But um,
Mhm.
he was really going through it, man. He was getting in trouble with the army a little bit. He was a former drill sergeant, and and I was on my drive with my dad. We drove from Benning back to New York when I got out, and I think we were in like Virginia or something like that. And a buddy from work called and said that he had just killed himself um,
Mhm.
while he was on the phone with his wife. Which
Yeah.
was nuts, man. So, um, you know, like the message of this, what this entire company's about is really showing awareness for it. It's okay for there's this stigma. I had a very good friend of mine who I obviously haven't talked to since high school, and she's actually getting ready to be a therapist, and her and I were talking a couple of days ago, and she sent me this great text about me starting the company and everything, and she said there's this huge stigma with it not being okay that men share their feelings or problems. Like, a man's not allowed to be like that. You got to be tough. You got to be a man. And when
Mhm.
she said that to me, that there's that stigma, and she's very right. And she's going to school right now to get this degree and, to be a therapist. But, and it's such a shame that it's a stigma because it doesn't need to be a stigma. You know what I mean? If you
Mhm.
feel a certain type of way, you should be able to express how you feel to whoever you feel necessary. Um, talk about your feelings and don't bottle it up, because, you bottle it up, one day you're just going to completely snap and explode, and definitely, obviously, don't hit the pills and don't hit the bottle, because that's,
Yeah.
that'll kill
Yeah.
you.
Self-medicating's not it, man. That's huge through the army specifically too. It's that self-medicating, which is huge. Like you were saying, man, it's men don't cry kind of thing. And the only way they know out, or they think they know out, is the alcohol, the drugs, and everything else. It's horrible. It only makes it worse. It really does.
I mean, listen, I'm all for a good time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really go
Pissing on
out
the
too much
couches.
anymore.
Yeah.
I don't go out too much anymore. I don't really drink too much.
Mhm.
But keep it under control, and if you're drinking at home on, every day of the whole week, you know, and you need it to operate and function, man, that's not good, especially if you have any mental health problems, because it's just going to just drive you deeper and deeper into a serious depression hole. And, uh,
Yeah.
like I mentioned in episode one, man, you gotta find outlets, be like me and take up golf. I suck at golf. I'm so bad at golf, but I love it. Um, it's
Hey.
it's
Yeah.
not every it's a seasonal thing here in New York, because right now it's
Yeah.
like 30 degrees out. But
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
find something, man. Play video
Yeah.
games, paint, or
Mhm.
do something. There's 100,000 things to do. Um,
Mhm.
but if you know you have a problem, don't you know drink and don't do
Yeah.
drugs. But talk it out.
Yeah.
The main thing, step one, is just talking it out. Um, come on this podcast. Like I said, like I mentioned with the whole promo of this whole company or this whole podcast that I'm doing, is not to, um, it's not to have these crazy, well-known Green Beret, well-known people that know their story. It's just about ordinary people that, want to share their experience and share their story. And if they have mental health problems or they're depressed or something like that, come onto the podcast and, talk about it. Whether or not you want to go live or not, or make this public or not, we could just sit here and have a conversation, because I love to talk about the military. I love to talk about military stories or stories from deployments or basic training. That's the joy I get out of it, is hearing the stories. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Absolutely, man.
watching. If you got your demons, man, my phone's always on. My Instagram and my Facebook and all that kind of stuff is always on. And Jeff obviously is the same way, man.
Yeah.
I mean, uh,
Please. Please. Yeah. I mean, and luckily I'm in a position right now as a cadre at the Soldier Recovery Unit where I see a lot of these mental health every single day. And, unfortunately, I'm becoming, and it's super unfortunate, I'm becoming really good about how we can approach these things and the ways there's outlets and organizations that help, and my, if you don't have my phone number, I'm, friends with, Bronis on Facebook. Hit me up, message me, please. Like, I'm here for you. I'll listen. I don't care what time of day or night it is. Just hit us up.
yeah, and I think collectively, everybody that's been super supportive for this whole podcast thing, because I've been getting nothing but amazing support. I mean, they all feel the same. I mean, I've been reached out many times by people that some of them I don't even know, and they just want to just talk and they want to share their, oh, how about me? Can I come on, dude? Absolutely. You know,
Mm.
I'm trying to do a podcast every week. I did one last week. I'm doing one this week. So I'm trying to do, but um, I will make the time for you, and to just sit down and talk and, you know, hear your stories, good or bad. If you had a good experience with the army, let me hear it. If you had a really shitty one, I still want to hear it. Let's
Yeah.
compare stories and compare units uh and yeah, but definitely reach out, man.
Yeah.
Uh, we're all here for you and you're not alone. So, but
Yeah, we're not therapists, but we're like-minded individuals, and that's sometimes what you need, man.
yep, 100%. Well, that's all we got for tonight, man. It's been great. Thanks for being guest number two.
Yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely.
thank you for sharing such um, you know, crazy things. Not a lot of people that have gone through the stuff that you did, your 4 years and 8 months in Afghanistan, would typically
Mhm.
want to share. But thank you for sharing that information and your stories about your deployments and your Army career. And, um, like he said, like Jeff said, he is upstate New York at Fort Drum, and he's an NCOIC for the Soldier Recovery Unit. So if you are up there stationed in Fort Drum
Yep.
and want to sit down and talk to somebody, he's the perfect person to do that. So,
Yep. And if you don't know where we're at, you're at Fort Drum. I'm right across the street from Guthrie Ambulatory Clinic, the Soldier Recovery Unit. My office is in there. Come ask for me. Everybody knows who I am. I'll help you out. Just reach out.
absolutely, definitely, definitely. And if anybody else wants to talk, like I said, this podcast is the platform for that. So, but like I said, man, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your experience. It was great talking to you. It's been 6 years since we've
Yeah.
been face to face. So it's been
Yeah,
a long
man.
time, but hopefully one day, and I really want this to happen. There could be a Praetorians reunion of some sort somewhere.
Wild that would be.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure.
Barksdale and Ochoa and Burke and all the boys. We could
Yeah,
we could orchestrate something one day to bring us all together again, whether it be this podcast. Maybe that would be
yeah,
really. Um,
yeah. Group podcast. But man, thank you for having me as well, man. Like I said, I mean, I'm going to be a huge supporter of what you're doing. It's in my opinion, is courageous what you're doing, man. Like I get like that want, that need, and you're actioning that. And it takes some people longer than others, man. But it's like you said, it's a good outlet. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for letting me share some of my story.
yeah, of course, man. And it's stuff that it's stuff that I didn't either remember or even know.
Mhm.
When you came, I was just a PFC, man. You were an E5,
Yeah,
so I didn't, uh, by infantry law, by Army law, you're not supposed to really talk to your NCOs, and
yeah,
find out. They're just supposed to be leaders there for you. But
yeah,
there's stuff that I didn't know about your deployments, and so it was super interesting. And thank you again for sharing this to the public, because I think it's super important for the public to know what people went through for the past 20 years while everybody was back in the States doing whatever, going to school and partying and doing all that kind of stuff, which I'm not knocking. But
yeah,
while these people were out living their best life, man, we had some serious, badass Americans that were really going through some shit for the past 20 years. So definitely for the people that, just be thankful for people like Jeff and the people that really, were there since the beginning. So but yeah, man, that's it. We're gonna wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. Episode 1, I haven't checked it today, but when I checked it yesterday, I think we were almost at 600 views, or we've surpassed 600 views, um, which is absolutely insane, man. So, um,
yeah,
this video this is a good one. This is a lot of cool stories. Like I said, if you have the stomach for it, check out My Fighting Season on National Geographic. You could see the experience firsthand of what Jeff went through. So definitely check that out. That's it. I got to figure out how to edit these damn things now. So take time. Just give me a break. I'm trying my best to work with this program to get this out on YouTube as soon as possible. Keep sharing it, liking, commenting, subscribing, share it with people, man. And that's it.
yeah.
Tune in next time for episode 3 of the Chosen Few podcast.